Hi folks, Jeff Westfall back with lesson 2 of Trapping Dummy for Dummies. Today I'm going to work on footwork with you. Of course we won't cover all the footwork that there is. These are just some pretty important steps for when you're working on the dummy, and as we go along I may add more in the future. I want you to imagine that you're standing at the center of a clock, or maybe of an asterisk. That's what on computer keyboards is called star, or a compass with 8 points. Right? Doesn't matter, just as long as you're thinking of these different directions. As I face the dummy, I've got a straight ahead direction and a straight away direction. I call this the contested plane. I've also got movement on all the other directions. I can move diagonally, I can move out to the side, I can move diagonally back that way, or straight back, or any calibration in between any of these. The reason we practice 8, that's a pretty good sampling, but you want to play around and adjust your footwork as you see fit. So starting first, let's do the contested plane footwork, which basically means linear footwork. I'm starting maybe a little closer to the dummy than I sometimes might, because I want to stay in the camera frame. I might well start way back here in reality so that I can come up the contested plane with a kicking technique this way. So most of the time, that's the way I start a lot of my dummy work, is starting way out there. But that's not going to be camera friendly for today. So anyway, to retreat from my salute, I step one foot back and the other one, leave the other one forward. I can slide it to get further, or I can stay in place and take it back. Same thing going forward. Once I'm in my fighting stance, I shuffle step. You usually don't want to slide step through, but you can. There are conditions where you can. That's getting a little ahead of above our pay grade for trapping for dummies. So for basics, when we're going forwards and backwards, we're just shuffling. Now that's up and down the center line. Now, if I want to go and relate to the dummy on different angles, I'll start first with the 2 angles that go past the opponent this way. So I can step, I'll start a little further back here. I can step my left foot to the left on a 45-degree angle. Now, if my angle's close enough that I feel close, I might slide this way and get in a left lead. If I step slightly angled out wider, I might step my right foot in to get this position. So I've got 2 different ways I can step to the left. I can step to the left and be in a left lead. I can step to the left and be in a right lead. And of course, the same 2 hold true for over here. Left lead, right lead. Now, I can also go laterally. So if I go to the side, I really have the same 2 options that I just showed you. It's just that my setup step, my preliminary step, instead of being diagonal, is lateral. Now going to the rear. I'm usually not going to pivot from there unless I really want a ton of distance. Maybe I want to do a big skipping kick or some other technique that requires a lot of room. So more often than not, when I go diagonally back, I go into a right lead to the left and a left lead to the right. There are definitely exceptions to every rule. That's what I'm showing you for right now. Finally, we're going to move along the base. And what that means is we move sideways across the front, perpendicular to the contested plane. Let me show you this on this angle. The simplest version is to swivel, sit my butt out a bit so I'm not leaning. This is wrong. I want a fairly vertical line up from the crown of my head through my butt, back up and down. And this foot is actually just barely on the ground. It's basically acting as a counterweight more than anything holding weight of mine. And I can shift and come over here. I'm blading my upper body to make it as sideways as I can, avoiding attacks, ideally, if I apply at the correct time with the correct technique. You can do this on your 2 heels, which gives you less distance and a little more speed. You can do it on the balls of your feet, which moves you further and takes a few hundredths of a second longer. You also can do a step and slide version, where I begin by stepping to the side. That becomes my planted base foot, and I slide this foot. Let me get a little further back so you can see the whole step. So here I am, right along the front plane of the dummy, the baseline right here. I step over here, and I step here. Now, I like to think of 3 different reference points when I'm practicing this. Every one of them involves a kind of a weird science fiction visualization that I use, and that is, I imagine a laser beam coming out of the end of the arm of the dummy. So for the first set of reference points, I'm imagining I'm staying between his 2 arms. Each of these laser beams is taking turns shooting at me. Fortunately, they don't both shoot at the same time. So if this one shoots, I want to turn this way. If this one shoots, I want to turn that way. So I can stay between these 2, executing my basic hand movements with the smallest amount of travel. So that's between 2 arms. Now I completely ignore one arm and only pay attention to the other. Now since the camera's there, I'll pay attention to this arm. I either want to be on the outside of this arm or I want to be on the inside of this arm. And that actually requires that I move a little farther than I did when I stayed between the 2. So from here, I want to make sure that that laser beam doesn't touch me. I step and slide. Now I have to step a little bit. Just rotating is not enough. So I step, slide, and rotate. And my hand movements are acting as they're supposed to act because I'm stepping to the correct position. The last one, the one that requires me to sidestep the furthest, is to begin on one side, one outside of one arm, and go all the way to the outside of the other arm. Right? So what you're seeing here is that I can have a reference point that demands a pair of reference points that demands a larger step, a sort of intermediate, medium-sized one, and the smallest one is when I'm trying to stay between the 2 arms. And that takes care of our basic footwork for trapping dummy for dummies.